For the sake of the video, close your eyes and just imagine. You are the son of a great royal family of magicians that has existed for over 1,000 years. Your family is well known by great magicians everywhere and also incredibly respected. In that family, you're seen as a prodigy, a genius, a one in a million. So much so that your grandfather would rather make you the head of the family instead of your father. You were born into an environment far better than most could hope for, with talents greater than most could dream of. You knew you were destined for greatness and that your future was very bright. I'm going to make something beautiful. I'm going to make something wonderful. You had these thoughts and ideals full of passion every time you woke up, ate, studied, basically all the time. Until one day you found yourself in a filthy shed under a bridge, full of despair, almost dead. Now, open your eyes. I'm sure that you, the person watching, is a really cool person, cool enough to watch this video. But this video isn't about you. That entire thing I told you to imagine is all about Chaldea Wodime, one of the best antagonists in Fate. Let's first talk about his backstory. One day, as Chaldea was walking around, crossing a bridge, he was targeted by assassins sent after him by his father, because, well, mages are absolute devils. Barely managing to live, he fell into a river. As he was unconscious, someone had dragged his body from the river into a shack under the bridge and placed him on a bed. Normally, after a bit of time, he should have been healed by his magical crest, but Chaldea knew immediately that his crest wasn't gonna save him. One of the reasons Chaldea was seen as such a great magician with such great potential was his incredibly rare magical crest, focused on healing its bearer in the event they suffered an injury, even if they could not do so themselves. Basically, he had super healing. But that didn't matter anymore. He was poisoned with an anti-mage toxin that rendered both his magical crest and circuits basically useless. He was dying. The only other person with him was a boy whose name he didn't even know. The boy was wearing a very old coat that was clearly thrown away by someone else, with hair that wasn't washed in years. He also had a habit of laughing nervously every time he spoke. Clearly a child that had been alone for most of its life. In short, to Chaldea, he was pitiful. Chaldea, being a very high-class and arrogant magician, was ashamed of himself for the fact that he was saved by such a pitiful creature. The boy didn't know who Chaldea really was. Even so, he still wanted to help Chaldea get better. So, for a while, he would give him stale and moldy bread for what felt like weeks, even though Chaldea's digestive system was barely working. When he ate his first delicious stale and moldy bread, he thought it was only a matter of time until the assassins sent to kill him found him again and finished their job. His only hope was his grandfather figuring out that some things went wrong and sending people to find him. But he knew that by then it would only be too late and he would be killed. Or so he thought. Days passed and nothing happened. Even though his body was still paralyzed and he couldn't stand up, he was getting accustomed to his environment. The shed was under the bridge, so they had access to water as well. While he was living there, he was getting more and more curious about the boy with him. The boy wouldn't tell Chaldea about his past, but Chaldea could take guesses based on how the boy talked and looked. For example, how he was most likely an orphan and how he most likely hadn't had any real conversations with adults, or anyone else for that matter, based on the boy's limited language skills. When Cryptaria asked the boy his name, he stayed silent. Cryptaria, being privileged, couldn't believe that the boy didn't even know his own name. One time, as they were talking, the boy showed Cryptaria a pendant he wore around his neck. Cryptaria was surprised, even though the boy probably didn't know that pendant was a mystic code of presence concealment. That pendant was the reason why the assassin sent after Cryptaria didn't find him, and how the boy was still alive, even though he didn't know anyone. With it, he could, quote-unquote, borrow bread and save Cryptaria without anyone seeing him. Cryptaria couldn't bring himself to ask how he got this pendant, but now he understood the situation. The boy was living as a ghost to society. He wasn't invisible, but people couldn't see him. Or maybe it was better to say that they naturally ignored him. Cryptaria felt sad for the boy. He actually recognized the boy as an ally, instead of some disgusting orphan. Always saw you on bridge. Always I saw, is what Cryptaria heard the boy say after a few days. Cryptaria remembered that he saw this boy every time he was crossing the bridge. So, as far as the boy was concerned, Cryptaria was just some person who passed by the bridge above where he lived. And that, somehow, was enough for the boy to save him. The boy was ignorant, but he was still rather smart. For starters, he never once left far from the room. He instinctively understood that if he left far with the pendant, the people who attacked Cryptaria could come back and discover them. So, for 2 weeks, the boy fed Cryptaria with food he had on hand. One day, the boy started to act strange. When Cryptaria asked him what was wrong, the boy told him everything was fine. Even when he was used to this lifestyle, Cryptaria was still beyond exhausted. Unsurprisingly, the food he was eating every day had no nutritional value, and even though the pendant kept him safe from danger, it also hid them from Cryptaria's allies. In short, his body was getting destroyed. The next day was the first time the boy woke him up out of his own accord. Hee hee. Hee 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 hee. Food. Food. Eat, eat, up. Have lots, lots. Cryptaria was beyond excited. In his hands, the boy had a bag filled to the brim with freshly baked bread. Finally, he could eat something that wouldn't try to break his teeth every time he bit into it. Even so, if you remember, Cryptaria is still privileged at this point, so he asked the boy why not just bring stuff other than bread. It wasn't until later when he realized why the boy only had bread with him. He never knew of any other sort of meal. Stale, moldy bread was mostly all he ate his entire life. He was like a dog, eating dog food. Cryptaria didn't understand back then, because his life was full of luxury, but that wasn't important. There was something much, much more important that he failed to notice. As he was eating the fresh bread, the boy suddenly fell onto the bed. The boy looked so malnourished that Cryptaria failed to even notice just how injured he was. That was when Cryptaria realized that the boy normally wouldn't have enough food for 2 people for over 2 weeks. He was living alone. The only reason he had any food was because no one had stopped him thanks to the pendant. The food he had on hand was only enough for one person, only enough for him. And ever since he took Krishtarya in, he hadn't gone outside because he knew if he left with the pendant, the room wouldn't be safe. So, he had left the pendant beside Krishtarya's bed to keep him safe. In that instant, Krishtarya figured out what had happened. He must have been accosted and beaten over and over again. And since he hadn't really eaten anything for 2 weeks, his body simply gave out. Krishtarya couldn't believe anyone would ever do something like this, something so foolish. He may have been ignorant, but he wasn't dumb. He couldn't have done this willingly. At least, that's what Krishtarya believed. As the boy was laying on the bed with 0 energy, he looked at Krishtarya and said, "Oh, pretty, pretty, pretty." Seconds later, the boy had died. Krishtarya wasn't overcome with grief, shock, or anger. He was simply done. Done with his own stupidity, completely fed up with his own foolish goals and ideals. Create something beautiful, born to be a king, a chosen genius. He thought of it all as a joke. Actually, no. As he saw it, jokes were at least funny. He was utterly done. He had endlessly bragged on and on about creating beautiful things, thinking that calling them beautiful was enough, never once stopping to think about what the word beautiful even meant. He had ambitions, but didn't know what they really were. Either way, the boy's life had ended foolishly saving the most foolish human that has ever lived. Krishtarya was the prodigy of a great family of magicians. He was royalty, while the boy was below commoners. He might as well have not existed. It was clear who was going to have the bigger impact on the world. But to Krishtarya, what the boy had done was something incredible, more amazing than any dream he had. Krishtarya began to wonder if he could do what the boy had done for someone else. Could he risk his life to keep someone else from going hungry without asking for anything in return, just because he felt like it was a beautiful thing to do? And so Krishtarya pondered. He simply pondered for a minute, until he realized why. Of course he can do that. He finally got up from his sleeping position, and as he did, he could feel his 1 in millions magical circuits physically crumble away. And after that, he ate every single piece of bread the boy had brought him. The boy had shown him what Krishtarya could do, even if it was done unknowingly. He needed bigger ambitions, bigger ideals, if he wanted to be a star. So, he kept eating his very delicious and not stale and moldy bread. He became determined to give all he had for his dreams, no matter what. It's not really known what he did until 2015, 2017, and the things we know aren't really that important to what happens later in the story, so we can just move on. Years later, around the year 2017, or 2015 if you're Japanese, Krishtarya joined an organization called Chaldea. Chaldea is a secret agency that is built to mostly observe and, if it comes to it, protect humanity from sudden extinction. In the year 2017, even though they could observe humanity's life for at least 100 more years, suddenly they confirmed that humanity would face extinction in 2 to 3 years. In a panic, they recruited and kidnapped 48 masters from across the world that had an aptitude for race shifting. Race shifting can basically project a living person into the past. In a way, it's a time-traveling machine. By race shifting people to the past, they could, quote-unquote, correct singularities in the past that should not exist. Singularities being events in history that didn't actually happen, but happening in the past now. For example, John Arc reviving as a vengeful tyrant, or gods battling over the shiny cup in Babylonia. The reason for their existence is a cursed object called the Holy Grail, and by removing it, the singularity gets corrected. To help them with this objective, they could summon servants, people from different myths and histories that could fight very well and were incredibly strong. But none of that is really important to Cryptoria and his life. Cryptoria was chosen as a master and put into Team A. There were 7 people in Team A, and Cryptoria was their leader. Team A was the only team in Chaldea that actually mattered. Everyone else was just there as backup, just in case. Or that's how it should have been. As soon as all 48 masters, -1, Ritsuko was getting scolded for sleeping, stepped into their capsules ready to be sent to the past, Chaldea was attacked by a dude named Levlanor, later revealed to be Goetia. Go watch my Goetia video. Because of that, 47 of the masters were put out of commission, including Cryptoria. For 2 to 3 years, they were all frozen to be kept alive. In those 2 years, the 48th master, called Ritsuka, and the rest of Chaldea saved humanity from Goetia and almost made it to the year 2020. But humanity's reason for extinction wasn't Goetia, it was something else. In those 2 years, Cryptoria Wodime wasn't entirely unconscious. In his own dreams, he too saved humanity from Goetia. He too faced the exact same battles as Ritsuka, at least, again, in his dreams. After that, his soul itself was in massive pain and he was greatly injured. After he defeated Goetia, in his sleep, an entity called the Alien God, which isn't its real name, approached Cryptoria. It came with an offer: either help it accomplish its goals, or die in his own coffin. At first, it was only an offer to Cryptoria, but Cryptoria denied, and told that he would only agree if it gave the same chance to the rest of Team A. The Alien God was confused. Why would Cryptoria want to make things harder for himself? For the Alien God's plan to work, it only needed one person to do a few things for it, and that would be enough. The most important of those things was growing a fantasy tree in a Lostbelt. A Lostbelt is a divergence of the proper timeline. Basically, very big what-ifs in history. Like, what if Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, became immortal and took over the world as a giant supercomputer? Or, what if Arjuna from the Mahabharata absorbed every god in India and rebuilt the world over and over again until he got rid of everyone he deemed evil? Every one of those Lostbelts has a fantasy tree that is there to confirm its existence. Once the fantasy tree blooms, it can be a vessel for the alien god to descend into Earth. The problem comes when there are multiple Lostbelts, because only one fantasy tree needs to bloom for the alien god to descend. If multiple Lostbelts exist at once, then they will need to fight to see which tree will remain. It's like a battle royale of different civilizations, like a Hunger Games. One last thing to note is that the fantasy trees are all connected and are spreading their roots all over the Earth. In short, if the other 6 members of Team A get their own Lostbelts, there will be more competition for Cryptaria. But Cryptaria didn't care. He told the alien god that as long as there was a non-zero chance that one of the other six may surpass him, he wouldn't dismiss it. There was no point in building a quote-unquote humanity on his own. In return, the alien god told him that bringing a human life back is easy, but it will require a level of suffering sufficient to stop the entire world in its tracks. And because of the fact that the other six's bodies have sunk into the void, whatever that means, they can't take that suffering themselves. Cryptaria would have to save humanity 6 more times with each of them to bring them back. Once with each of them. But Cryptaria didn't care. To him, if it was humanly possible, he would do it. At this point, Cryptaria is determined to the point of insanity for his dreams. Being able to create a better humanity gives him an ultimate goal to achieve. Even when determined, he didn't really have a concrete goal. Until now. Back in Chaldea, after some time, it was gonna be sold to a magician from a famous family called Gordolf Music. It was because of some rather complicated circumstances that we have no reason to get into. It was at the end of December. By that time, most of the masters that were brought in to save humanity were unfrozen and sent back to their homes. Of the 48 masters, only 8 stayed in Chaldea. Ritska was ready to get his paycheck and leave, and the rest were Team A members, which were still frozen in their capsules because they suffered the worst injuries. But when Chaldea successfully unfroze them and opened their capsules, they were gone, nowhere to be found. Shortly after, Chaldea was attacked with no chance to defend itself. Almost all the servants that were summoned were already gone, and the ones that stayed were not very strong. Most of Chaldea's staff died, and the ones that lived barely got away. As they got away, they saw multiple of what looked like meteoroids falling straight down. Once the Earth was bleached, think of it as an extremely white planet, the meteoroids landed. Pure white as far as one could see. Humanity ceased to exist. In their place, the 7 Lostbelts were placed in different parts of the globe, all with their own history. As the Chaldeans were fleeing, they got a message by none other than Cryptaria of Wodime. In that message, Cryptaria explained that the way humanity was going was a mistake. He revolted against humanity, or proper human history, PHH, as he called it. He wanted to restore the Age of Gods. The Age of Gods had far more mana in its atmosphere than modern humanity. He wanted to use that mana to build his own perfect humanity. He declared that Team A, now known as the Cryptors, will inherit the world's history. And with the end of that message came the end of proper human history. December 31st, 2019 was the last day of proper human history. Kind of funny that 2020 was the cursed year. From the start of the war the Cryptors had, it was obvious that Cryptaria was the most likely to win. By far. His Lostbelt was a what if in ancient Greece. Okay, if you know nothing about fate, this is gonna be weird. In the Nasuverse, the Olympic gods are machine gods, with their human avatars being terminals. In the Nasuverse, they were killed by an entity called Safar. But in this Lostbelt, Zeus took control of all the other gods temporarily and fused with them. By doing that, he had enough power to drive Safar away. Normally, Safar's attack would cause the start of the end of the Age of Gods, but because it was driven away, the gods stayed in power, ruling over humanity. The other gods hated Zeus for fusing with them, but as a result, they were saved and continued to rule over humanity. After a while, the Olympic gods had a civil war. Zeus, Aphrodite, Demeter, Artemis, and Hera on the side of ruling over humanity, while Hades, Apollo, Hephaestus, Ares, Athena, Hestia, and Poseidon, who later becomes a mindless slave after the war, were on the side of living alongside humanity. Zeus won, and most of the gods were either destroyed or parts of them changed forever. Every Lostbelt has a king, and Zeus was the king of Olympus and Atlantis. Unlike other Lostbelts, Crystaria's Lostbelt was, for the most part, a utopia. People didn't really suffer much, and no one was left hungry, and the people in Atlantis had a very long lifespan, while the people in Olympus were basically immortal. Other than a few people, everyone was happy. Keep all these people in Lostbelt 5 in mind. They are very important to Crystaria's just goals, let's just say. Something to add before we get into his Lostbelt is his appearance in the second Lostbelt Chaldea took down, Götterdämmerung. As the Chaldeans were fighting the Lostbelt's king, Canis, one of Crystaria's 3 servants, appeared to show the Chaldeans a message. Crystaria predicted that the Chaldeans would reach the Lostbelt king and sent Canis to deliver the message. He explains that proper human history, to him, was not really a mistake, but not correct either. He thought that proper human history was a waste of potential, and that he chose to rewrite human history with the alien god's help. In his eyes, humanity lacked self-awareness. Humanity saw gods as the laws of nature, as the planet itself. But to Crystaria, those laws of nature weren't meant to be worshipped, but used. It was due to that mistake that humanity and gods parted ways, even though humanity could make great profits by using them. Crystaria respected the gods, but he wanted to make use of them as the human that he was. He wanted to make an age of gods where, human weakness is a thing of the past, a world that will endure, no matter how heated human consciousness becomes, a place where life can flourish, with neither deficient or fragmentation. Basically, he wanted to turn humans into gods. As the Chaldeans were taking down Lostbelt after Lostbelt, Crystaria's Lostbelt was getting bigger and bigger, and his fantasy tree, aka Tree of Emptiness, was almost ready to bloom. By the time the Chaldeans made their way to Atlantis, they had taken down 4 of the 7 Lostbelts. One of the cryptors was dead, one of them became a servant, and 2 of them were defeated and were staying in Olympus. Beryl God, we will get to him, another one of them was driven out of their Lostbelt and made her way to Olympus. He will be important later, as I said. Lastly, Crystaria couldn't confirm the existence of the last fantasy tree that belonged to the last cryptor's Lostbelt, and with that, Crystaria remained with the Lostbelt with the biggest advantage and the largest chance to succeed. As soon as the Chaldeans made their way into Atlantis, Crystaria threw all he had at them. Crystaria knew that he couldn't underestimate them. On the contrary, he greatly respected Ritzka, considering him one of the greatest people that have ever lived. Aside from Chaldea, Crystaria had another enemy he respected a lot. Being Zeus's only friend, the 2 of them decided to fight each other once the fantasy tree was ready, to see which of them should control it. Chrysaria never decided to work for anyone. Everything he did for his ideals and what he believed in. He never truly trusted the alien god and simply wanted to use the alien god's plan for his own gains, for the world he wanted to create. Back to the timeline, after the Chaldeans miraculously survived the onslaughts of the Atlanteans' army, Canis, Chrysaoria's first servant, decides to take out the Chaldeans herself. After she fails and almost dies, Chrysaoria himself shows up alongside his second servant, Dioscuri. While the Dioscuri are twins, they count as one servant. Now, while Chrysaoria's magical circuits were incredibly damaged for a lot of his life, he could still use magecraft. His most important was astromancy. Astromancy is an ancient magecraft that can temporarily control the planets and the stars in space. In the modern world, astromancy is incredibly weak because the modern world cannot support it. The more people understand magecraft, the weaker it becomes. For example, the more people know about electricity and how it works and what it really is, the weaker the magecrafts that control electricity become. Basically, the more mysterious a magecraft is, the stronger it is. Because of that, even though in proper human history, astromancy is incredibly weak, in the Age of Gods and the skies of Lostbelt Greece, it is, to put it simply, overpowered. Up to that point, Chaldeans had faced only a few beings that could rival him, and even then, he was debatably stronger. Even though he became that strong, he remained human. Not a god, not a servant. Human. After Chrysaria arrives, he orders the Dioscuri to take Canis away, while he fights the Chaldeans by himself. After he almost kills the Chaldeans, a man simply called the Chaldean, not confirmed but most likely Goetia, saves the Chaldeans. So much Chaldea. The Chaldean tells Chrysaria that he should give the Chaldeans one more chance, like how the alien god revived him and all the cryptors and gave them a second chance. Chrysaria surprisingly agrees. After all, to him, it's only fair. Chrysaria is weirdly open-minded. While he wants to make his new humanity, he wants to give others their own chance. He has an opinion, and he acts on it. He doesn't think he's necessarily right, he just has beliefs. Which is why he gives everyone so many chances, because he believes that they might have the right opinion. Another reason why he let them go is that he believed that he would definitely win his second fight, and because of that, he didn't want to waste it on the Chaldean. Why does he think that? Most likely because he studied astrology magic as well. I mean magecraft. If I had to guess. The Chaldean also promised that he would leave the Lostbelt if Chrysaria agreed. After that, they both leave, and the Chaldeans continue their journey. Again, watch my Goetia video! Before we move on, while the Dioscuri were supposed to save Canis and leave, they instead decided to kill her for personal reasons. Canis doesn't die, but gets thrown into the sea, and the reason she lives is because Chrysaria used the command spell on her. At least you can hear the sound. The Chaldeans slowly make their way into Olympus after a lot of struggling. While Atlantis was just a lot of islands above the sea, Olympus was a giant sky island inside of the Earth. As previously mentioned, Olympus is almost a utopia. People are basically immortal. Even if they die, they get resurrected by the gods. The gods can provide them with anything they want, while they focus on whatever they want to do. Mostly art. the people unsatisfied are very, very small. It's almost comparable to proper human history. Almost. On one hand, the Chaldeans are trying to cut the fantasy tree. On the other hand, the alien god wants to use the tree as a vessel to come down to Earth. While they have their own plans, Zeus wants to use it as an energy to go to a voyage in space. Even if the people on Olympus die, the proof of their existence would remain. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but this isn't a Zeus video, but a Chaldea video. And Chaldea has his own plans with the tree's energy. Basically, 4 different groups wanted the fantasy tree for their own purpose. If Zeus's plan didn't kill humanity, Chaldea would have helped them, but their goals simply weren't compatible. He saw Zeus's plan as another dead end, just like proper human history. Chaldea was basically alone in his plan and he couldn't exactly rely on anyone. He was but a human with a dream, and with crazy strong witchcraft. Chaldea doesn't interfere with Chaldea and their fight against Zeus all that much. He mostly stays back and watches the events unfold. Throughout their travels, the Chaldeans find Canis, almost dead, and heal her. After some negotiations, croissants, Canis decides to join them until Zeus is dead, and after which she will join Chaldea's side again. Something to note about Canis is that she was Chaldea's first servant and the only one who knows his plans. Kind of. Which is why she's so loyal to him. Now, let's talk about Chaldea and Canis. To get into that, we need to go back to the day Chaldea summoned Canis in Atlantis. Canis, at first, didn't want to obey Chaldea, so to convince her, he fought against her and, unsurprisingly, won by ease. But Canis still didn't want to be under him just because he was stronger. Chaldea was shocked that Canis considered him strong. To Chaldea, he was but a weak, fragile human that only beat Zeus and Canis under the right circumstances. On a different day, he would lose. Of course, Canis didn't believe him. Chaldea knew that Canis would most likely obey him if he told her his plans. And so, he did. He trusted her, and he was right. He told Canis about his plans, which I will get into, don't worry, and she was simply baffled. She had many questions. For one, why not tell us the Dioscuri instead? Aren't they more loyal? But Chaldea didn't see the Dioscuri as loyal, just rather insane. On the other hand, he knew about Canis and her legends, how she hated humans for being weak, herself included, and hated the gods for their flaws. How, even though she hated everything, she still decided to live and didn't take her own life. For a quick summary, Canis was a woman that was forcefully taken by Poseidon and, in return, even though she hated him, asked him to turn her into a powerful man so that she wouldn't lose all her hope again. As always, myths are wild. Chaldea told her again that if they fought again, he would lose. To convince her, he started to take off all his clothes and strip, bare naked. Underneath his clothes, he was wrinkly and simply looked terrible. This all happened after he came back to life. He also had a scar on his chest from when he got almost assassinated. After he took down his father and became the leader of his family, his objective became more clear. My sword then and there that I would find a way to overcome betrayal, oppression, discrimination, prejudice, fear, jealousy, anger, anxiety, all the human weaknesses and defects that cast a pall over our lives and minds. After Cryptaria's speeches ended, Canis finally decided to follow him and help him achieve his goals. Canis was probably Cryptaria's closest ally, the only one he could fully trust. Canis normally doesn't get along with others, and when she does, she mostly bullies them. But with Cryptaria, she didn't do that as much. They really cared for each other and were fully committed into Cryptaria's dream. Their friendship is actually really wholesome once you look into it. He also didn't forget to tell her that he is, in fact, not an Before we get into the final acts, if you were wondering what happened to Dioscuri, they got killed by the Chaldeans and Canis in Olympus. So... Yoo-hoo! After the Chaldeans took down all the Olympic gods and everyone else they had to fight, some of which just decided to leave, Canis left them to join Cryptaria next to the Tree of Emptiness again, and the Chaldeans followed soon after. Before the Chaldeans were about to start cutting down the Tree of Emptiness, Cryptaria showed up and told them that it's already too late. The Tree of Emptiness couldn't be cut down anymore. The only people that could cut it down were Zeus, which was dead at that point, and Cryptaria. The only way they could stop the alien god's descent was to defeat Cryptaria. Cryptaria was ready to give the Tree of Emptiness up if they could defeat him. In Atlantis, he was disappointed that he could take down Chaldea so easily, but this time the Chaldeans were ready, which made him very happy. In a way, the Chaldeans, more specifically Ritzka, were his greatest rivals. He never underestimated them, always respected them, and didn't believe that they were wrong. He simply saw the world he envisioned to be worth more. So that's what he fought for. And with that, the battle began. Master versus master. Let's first get into his plan. As a master, he summoned 3 servants in total: Canis, Dioscuri, and finally Atlas. The Tree of Emptiness was meant to be used as a vessel for the alien god, so that it could descend into Earth. But what if the Tree of Emptiness was already full? Then the alien god simply couldn't take it over and would be stuck wherever it was. Atlas was left inside of the tree for that purpose. He was never on the alien god's side. He always simply was using it to accomplish his own goals. He wanted to rebirth humanity. He wanted to use the energy the Tree of Emptiness had collected to create new laws, new textures, and spread them across the world. He believed humanity was incapable of making the right choices, not in terms of morality, but in terms of optimality, not even himself. Which is why he wanted to make the best humanity he could envision. He had the same dream as another foe the Chaldeans faced, but he had more determination. He believed that humans were hopelessly limited by their lifespans. Humans are a weak species. To Cryptaria, human intelligence is built on taking from others. A world like proper human history will only produce innocent victims. So what he wants to do is simple. He wants to change what it means to be human. If the human species is weak, he will make it stronger. If they are dumb, he will make them smarter. He will make the current humans available, better, in every way possible, turning it into something new. Naturally, that also goes for the cryptors and the Chaldeans, an age of gods where everyone is a god. There would be no more inequality, and everyone would have the power to influence the world. And one day, these quote-unquote better humans would make quote-unquote even better humans and leave. An endless cycle of perfection. He wants to tear down what it means to be a god. He believes that humanity is only in conflict because they're incompetent. They are too stupid to realize how stupid they are. Unlike Goetia, for the last time, watch that video. Chaldea doesn't want to make new humans because he thinks endings only mean sadness, but because he doesn't see the worth in the current humanity. He doesn't hate proper human history. He actually kind of likes it, but he sees more worth in his own dream. One last thing is that there would have to be someone to pull this dream of his off, and that someone can't become a god like the other new humans. So after he completes his plan, he would live out his days as the last old human and slowly bite the dust while witnessing his own creations. At least if everything goes right. Another thing is that the humans I'm talking about, the ones that would become quote-unquote better humans, would not be from proper human history. Proper human history is already gone. It's bleached. The new humans are the ones that currently exist now, which includes the Chaldeans, the cryptors, the people in Olympus and Atlantis, and possibly other Lostbelts. I'm not sure. Chaldea won the fight. The prophecy of his second fight was right on the money. The Chaldeans couldn't stop him. But Goetia needed 3,000 years worth of human history as a fuel for his plan. So was Chaldea's plan even possible? Well, it was. With the amount of energy in the tree rivaling the same amount of energy as a human history, he could do it. But even if he could do that, conflict between people would still exist. As long as people are intelligent, there will be conflict. He understands that. As long as individuals exist, fighting will remain a cycle. But with larger perspectives and broader wisdom and a longer lifespan, all of the fighting would end at some point. As I said, he sees the current humanity as too stupid to stop fighting against itself. The amount of hope Chaldea had for this version of humanity was unrivaled by anything else. His belief in humanity was like no other. Even so, he couldn't bring back the people of proper human history, as I said. The tree simply didn't have enough power. This would only affect people that were on Earth at that moment, possibly other Lostbelts included. As I said, I'm not sure. Trying to stop him, the alien god tries to end its contract with Chaldea, which would kill him. Because of that, Chaldea knew that his time was limited. Even so, he gave proper human history one final chance to prove itself. He likes doing that a lot. Chaldea himself versus Chaldea one last time. If they could stop him, they would be one step closer to bringing proper human history back. And if they couldn't, they would become gods of a new world. They fought until both sides were exhausted. Chaldea admitted defeat, but also admitted that he couldn't stop the tree right now. He won. He made his ideal humanity. The new age of gods began. But it didn't. Now, before we, get into how his plan fell apart, I want to just reiterate the fact that he planned to make every human, other than himself, into gods. Even if his plan worked flawlessly, he would remain a regular human. Just like how a doctor can heal anyone other than himself, Chaldea couldn't make himself into a god along with everyone else. The spell he had to use required a central spellcaster, and he was the only one capable. Even so, after he was done with his plan, he was going to live for as long as he could. With him out of the picture, it would be everyone else's time to shine. But he was still happy with that. Actually, he was still incredibly excited despite of that. Even if he remained as a relic of the past, it didn't matter, as long as his dream became reality, which, as you can guess, didn't. The Tree of Emptiness started to burn out of nowhere. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be possible. The Tree of Emptiness couldn't be burned from the outside, which is why it was burned from the inside. Remember how I said that every Tree of Emptiness is connected to a degree? Well, someone burned their own Tree of Emptiness to burn the one in Olympus. And that person is Betrayal. I told you we would get into him. And he explained all that while trying to stab Chaldea in the back. Literally. Betrayal controlled the British Lostbelt, but due to circumstances, the people of his own Lostbelt hated him. Kinda. So he fled to Olympus. Now, Betrayal was not on Chaldea's side. Far from it. He was a psychotic murderer that lacked any type of empathy whatsoever. Chaldea barely managed to deflect his weapon due to risk of warding him at the last second. Chaldea was confused. Even if Betrayal had killed him, the Chaldeans were right there. Without a servant, he stood no chance of running away or defending himself. Even though Chaldea should have seen his betrayal coming, he didn't. One of his flaws is how trusting he is, to the point where he becomes naive. After all, why would Betrayal stab him in the back? Betrayal was disappointed. Of course Chaldea wouldn't get why he tried to kill him. So, Betrayal changed the subject until he got to his point. According to him, he had done things in the British Lostbelt which made him a little hated there. And so, if the king of the British Lostbelt knew where he was, that king would send some magic nuke to kill him. After all, they had it out for him real bad. All he had to do was raise his voice a little bit and say, "Here I am!" and they would bring divine retribution to him. As soon as he said that, a giant beam of light came from outer space. It was the power of the divine weapon, Rongominiad, a lance belonging to Old Britain. Chaldea urged everyone to run, knowing that his plan was falling apart. In the meantime, he created a barrier that blocked the divine lance. He knew that this was going to be the end of his plan, so he did everything in his power to at least let Chaldea live, because while he liked his version of humanity a lot, if he failed, he was willing to compromise. But doing that left him vulnerable. This time, he succeeded. He stabbed Chaldea in the back. He told him he lost because he was too busy. If he knew what was going on in Britain, he would never have put Betrayal in charge. His original plan was just to burn down the Tree of Emptiness and then leave. But after hearing Krishtaria's speech, he had no choice but to kill him. As I have said, Beryl is sick. He enjoys hurting and torturing people. He has always been like this, and it's all that he is. He's a psychotic murderer. Nothing more, nothing less. In a world where everyone is a god, he has no place, so he had to kill Krishtaria. Krishtaria had failed to account for the worst of humanity. He simply believed that, given the time, people would get along. But Beryl was different. Beryl was the type of person that couldn't live in peace. To him, a world without the ugliness of humanity was simply too boring. Beryl didn't want to become some enlightened, good-hearted version of himself. He knew he was terrible, but he was completely okay with it. If you're wondering where Canis was, she was fighting one of the alien god's disciple after Krishtaria revealed his plan to everyone. Because of that, no one had the chance to protect Krishtaria from Beryl. Afterwards, Beryl expected, or at least pretended to, Chaldea to be on his side, knowing that if he fought Chaldea in a straight fight, he would most likely die, even if Chaldea was exhausted. He decided to provoke them instead. As soon as Ritska stepped closer to him, Beryl decided to take the chance and kill him right then and there. But before he could do that, Canis finally appeared, bewildered by the body on the ground. That distracted Beryl, and so he missed his chance to kill Ritska. Beryl tried to convince Canis to become his servant, but she didn't even say yes or no, she just threatened him. Obviously. Before things could escalate, another one of the alien god's disciples showed up and stopped Canis. He wanted to confirm if Beryl and Canis were on the side of the alien god or not. Canis denied it, saying she was only on Krishtaria's side. Beryl, however, almost confirmed that he was still on the same side as the alien god. Beryl didn't care about the future of humanity, and he certainly didn't want to become any king either. He just wanted to live and have fun, even at the expense of others. He didn't want any titles or any remnants of himself. He didn't want to do anything great either. He just wanted to live for his own sake. But he also couldn't help but wonder if the alien god was all that strong. Krishtaria made us that it couldn't descend into the Tree of Emptiness in Olympus. Britain's tree was barely alive anymore, and the Tree of Emptiness in South America's existence couldn't be confirmed. What can the alien god do if it doesn't have a suitable vessel? And with that, Beryl also said that he wasn't working for the alien god anymore, because of the fact that Krishtaria was the one who technically saved the other cryptors. The alien god had no control over them. After sensing a lot of bloodlust from the priest, Beryl left Olympus, with some help. Then the third and final alien god apostle appeared and cut Atlas in half, leaving room for the alien god to take over the tree. And so the alien god emerged, albeit in a very incomplete vessel. Because the Tree of Emptiness was half burned, the alien god descended in a very incomplete state, without all of her authority. After the alien god was acting like an arrogant child and giving her very epic speech that I won't go into because this video is already too long, she got hungry and started eating the earth. While she was laughing at humanity's incompetence, she got caught by an attack that she couldn't have seen coming. As the Chaldeans lost all hope, they heard a voice, and that voice belonged to Cryptaria of Wodime, being carried by Canis. He was completely defeated. His tree got razed to the ground, and the foreign god descended to the world. His plan, that almost came to fruition, ended in complete failure. He couldn't turn things around for himself anymore, but he could help the Chaldeans. And so, that's what he did. He was down to his last trump card, one which he wouldn't use normally. He could make sure the alien god went away, even if temporarily. It would give the Chaldeans enough time to run away and fight another day. Because he couldn't really fight anymore, he decided to leave humanity's fate to his greatest rival. After some final words, the Chaldeans leave Cryptaria and Canis to stop the alien god. The priest was still there, and even though he could stop Cryptaria right there, he decided not to, believing this to be the perfect chance for the alien god to learn not to underestimate Earth. And so he uses his final trump card, called Serious Light, to strike the alien god. The reason why it's something that shouldn't be used is that if one uses it, they will lose their life. It's the ultimate sacrificial technique. After he used it, the alien god disappeared, but certainly didn't die. At the top of Olympus, only two people remained, Cryptaria and Canis. Cryptaria was already blinded, and now also completely lost his lower body, but he still had no regrets. In his last moments, he simply just talked to his servant. He told her about all the simulations he went through and the bonds he created with all the cryptors. Other than David. At this point in the story, we still knew almost nothing about him, even if they were all just dreams that only he could remember. He really wanted to save the world, together with everyone in Team A, but fate simply chose his path for him. Canis told him he didn't have to try so hard by himself, that he was an idiot for doing all that. I'm glad to hear you say that, Canis, but you're wrong. I was never all by myself. All humans are trying to do their best. And with those final words, his life came to an end. There was a lot of pointless exposition in this video that probably shouldn't have been there, but I wanted to tell Cryptaria's story in a way that even someone who doesn't know about Fate Go could understand. It was just kind of fun to do. There was also a lot of things that didn't fit into the video, and also a lot of things that I didn't go into because the video would have been too long. But the things that were interesting in my opinion, I will share now. For one, the reason why I delved so deep into Betrayal and talked about him so much is because of the fact that he seems like the anti-Cryptaria to me. On one hand, you have Cryptaria. Everything he did for humanity. He believed in the best of humanity and bet on the fact that after a long time, humans would simply learn to coexist. He, in a weird way, represented the best of humanity. On the other hand, Beryl represented the worst of humanity. He simply did not care about humanity at all. He had no hope for humanity. He just didn't care. All he wanted was a comfortable life of killing other people. I mean, he even threw his humanity away in Lostbelt 6. Still, wish he got more screen time in Lostbelt 6. He really needed it. There are also the Olympus citizens. To me, they seem like the light version of Krishtaria's dream. Every citizen was almost as strong as the average servant, and they lived for a really long time, basically forever. The only thing missing is the higher intellect. But one thing Krishtaria forgot about was drive. If people could do anything, would they want to do anything? We can't know for sure how Krishtaria's humanity would look like, but chances are they wouldn't have any motivations because of their lack of weakness. Kind of like how Olympus citizens were provided with everything, making them overly reliant on the gods. Another thing I could barely fit into the video was how much of a goofball Krishtaria was. While he always seemed like a very high and mighty dude, under more normal conditions, he would have acted as a very normal dude. He loved his friends, he loved jokes, and was not very good at using technology. Sometimes he seemed untouchable, and other times he just seemed like a nerd. Even though he's very strong mentally, he still feels human. I didn't know if I wanted to include Canis' end in the main script, so I just thought why not put it here to just fully conclude that whole arc. After Krishtaria died, she went to fight Chaldea to prove that she was the right heroic spirit for him, that he wasn't wrong in trusting her. After challenging Chaldea with all she had, and lost, everything that had to do with Krishtaria ended. While it wasn't really a part of his story, Canis was the last remnant of Krishtaria before she died. With her gone, his story fully concluded. He was almost the same as Goetia, but unlike Goetia, he was human. Completely so, even if privileged. He understood humanity, at least parts of it. He just thought it could do better, that humanity had much more potential than what they are right now. He doesn't think that proper human history is necessarily wrong, he just likes his view of humanity more. He's actually surprisingly open-minded, as I said, and willing to give up on his dreams if he sees that things just aren't working out. And finally, I have to admit something. This script for this video was made over a year ago. I just never got around into making it a full video. I still edited it a little bit, I mean most of it, but it's kind of a different style. I still liked it, so I stuck with it. Compared to my other two videos, it's more story driven. This video also concludes the three great antagonists of Fate Go with Oberon, Goetia, and Krishtaria, at least for now. Apparently David is awesome as well, so I'm excited for him too. And remember, Krishtaria is not an exhibition